Well, if you've been with us through the book of Matthew, we've been going through Matthew chapter 5, and Jesus' sermon thus far has given us clarity as the law relates to activity and the heart issue. Jesus has talked and given clarity on murder, lust, and divorce. Again, you've got to just remember who Jesus is talking to. He's talking to Jewish people who thought they were pretty good, for the most part, especially because the Jewish people would compare themselves to the pagan Gentiles around them. We are God's chosen people. God has given us the law. God has given us promises. God has given us this. So they really looked at themselves as better and superior spiritually than the Gentiles around them, the Gentile dogs around them. And they really viewed themselves as kind of ultra spiritual and ultra superior because externally they focused on righteousness and what they thought the law told them they should do. And so you just have to keep in mind the audience to whom Jesus is talking here. And so as Jesus says, you've heard it said of old, don't murder, but I say unto you, anyone who is angry with his brother commits murder. You've heard it said, don't commit adultery, but I say unto you, anyone who looks upon a woman with lust commits adultery in his heart. You've heard it said, Moses gave you a certificate of divorce, but I say unto you, anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her to commit adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. And so there were these things these issues, these external issues that the Jewish people said, never committed adultery, never murdered. My divorce was legal because I gave her a certificate, so I'm good. I have kept the law. So when you even hear Jesus saying to people, or them coming to Jesus, hey, Jesus, what must I do? Jesus says, keep the whole law. Right? What do you have to do to be right with God? Well, you must be perfect. Keep the whole law. It is crazy. The Jewish people sometimes will respond, yeah, I've done that. All these things I have kept from my youth up. I've kept the law, Jesus. What do I still lack? So you have to understand the mindset of the average self-righteous, pharisaical kind of Jewish person. They really thought they had done enough to merit favor and to merit God's love and favor and relationship. And so what Jesus is showing them here is actually not so fast. Actually, like last week, your divorce is actually adultery. I don't care if you have this little piece of paper or based on a tenuous interpretation of Deuteronomy 24. I know you've never actually cheated on, but you've lusted. I know you've never murdered, but you've sinned in your anger. And so Jesus is just saying, hey, listen, the law shows us who we really are. The law exposes us for who we are. That this isn't a matter of just external behavior. This is an issue of the heart. That's the point. And so we now turn in our next text to what many consider less serious offenses, right? I mean, we've talked murder, lust, divorce, like those are kind of the big ones. Now, maybe what we consider less of serious offenses, but are offenses nonetheless that violate God's law. Jesus now turns our attention to two aspects of your personal life. All right? So I'm going to ask you to not look and evaluate based on other people, but now it's like turn and look at yourself. Aspects of your personal life that all people will notice about you. These two things are your integrity and your servanthood. Your integrity and how you serve and sacrifice for others. Do you have integrity and do you sacrificially serve other people? These are two things that are either a characteristic of your life in Christ or are not. These are things that are difficult to fake, and therefore these two things are kind of out in the open for all to see. When you're at work, right, you know people that have integrity, and you know those who don't. You know the people that when asked will step up and do more than what is required. And those who serve willingly so that others can succeed. And so in our text today, we see that integrity and servanthood are characteristics of the New Covenant community and must be characteristics of our community here and of your life individually. So Matthew chapter 5, Let's begin reading in verse 33. Jesus says, "Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear you shall not swear falsely," right? So one of the 10 commandments, right? You've heard it. You've heard this taught. Do not bear false witness against your neighbor, or don't swear falsely. In other words, whatever you swear, whatever oath you make, you must keep, right? So this is Old Covenant law that all of the Israelites were super familiar with, and there's kind of no getting around it. The law says, speak truthfully, be honest, have integrity, don't swear falsely, don't bear false witness against your neighbor. Whatever oaths you keep those oaths, right? You've heard that said. So, then Jesus says, so you've heard it said, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But then Jesus says, but I say unto you, now here's what I say, do not take an oath at all. Either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your own head, for you cannot make one hair white or black, right? Obviously. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than that comes from evil. All right, so the first thing we're going to see today is this. Jesus talks about grace in the gospel. He's talking about what it produces in the life of someone who's a part of the New Covenant community. That the gospel produces a life that is characterized by integrity. So what was happening in this text was that people would say that they would do something. This was prevalent throughout this first century Jewish community. They would commit to something, and then they would be then they would swear an oath that they would do it. Kind of like, cross my heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye, right? Right? If I don't, I'll die and stick needles in my eyes. I promise you I'm going to do this, right? Like that's kind of the idea there. Yet, what was happening is they would make these oaths. Oh, I swear by Israel, I swear by the holy city that I will do this, right? And they would make these oaths, but then they wouldn't keep them. And it was happening all the time. It was actually almost woven into this Jewish culture. Almost to the point where you couldn't really trust people very much when they made an oath to you. And so what's going on here is Jesus is saying that actually when you say something, that God is actually a witness to what you speak. But they were finding these loopholes in the Old Covenant law. Okay, so you're like, how can you argue with what the Bible was saying? Well, they were actually, it's just crazy what's going on within this first century mindset, all right? And this is why Jesus had such a problem with first century Judaism, all right? It was so foreign to actually what his message of the gospel was. Like they were presenting themselves to be so holy and righteous and spiritual, when in fact they were none of those things. And Jesus is trying to expose that. And so they would say an oath and commit to something and then not even mean it. But then it's like, well, aren't you violating the law? Well, it depends on the rabbis. So Rabbi so-and-so, have I violated the law by giving an oath and not keeping it? The rabbi looks at the text. And they began to say, well, the Bible says you must keep your oaths to God. But it doesn't necessarily say anything about keeping your oaths to other people. So, I guess if you keep your oath to God, that's fine, but maybe if you aren't keeping your oath to other people. So their whole point was, what can I do? How far can I go and still be not in violation of the law? And still be considered righteous? And so it just goes to show you that even these first century rabbis, they were just making stuff up. You know how we know? Because we have the Old Testament. You know what the Old Testament says? Just go to Zechariah the prophet. They had Zechariah. What does Zechariah say? These are the things that you shall do. Speak the truth to one another. Render in your gates judgments that are true and make for peace. Do not devise evil in your hearts against one another, and love no false oath. For all these things I hate, declares the Lord. What do you do with that? So this is really good because this really shows you the actual depravity of where first century Judaism was. This shows you why Jesus had such a problem with the religious leaders of first century Judaism. Because they just twisted the scriptures and found loopholes within the scriptures and then just outright denied certain scriptures. So they were literally teaching people, you must keep your oaths to God, but if you swear an oath to someone else and don't commit it, you're not in violation of the law. Maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe it's not great, but you haven't violated God's holy law. That's what they were teaching, so that became part of the culture. And everybody knew it. Everybody knew it was going on. Everybody knew that when Jesus was hitting on this point, they're like, uh-oh. You've heard it said, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say unto you, don't even take an oath at all. What does that mean? Jesus is saying everything you speak should be true. To the point, why do you have to say, no, I'm serious. All right, husbands, how many of you have committed to your wife that maybe it's going to be a project at home, like I'm going to get to it this week, right? And then the week comes and it doesn't get done. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, you know what? I got busy. I promise you, babe, I'm going to get that done now. Like this week, I'm going to get to it. It doesn't happen, right? No, I swear, I promise, cross my heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye, right? I promise, right? I'm going to do it, right? After a while, your wife is like, what? She rolls her eyes, yeah, okay. Whatever, right? Like your words mean nothing. Your oath, right? Your promises are hollow. Right? It doesn't matter. I swear I'll do it this week. I swear by the city of Jerusalem, right? Try that, guys, right? Swear by Jerusalem, right? Actually don't, because Jesus said not to. But why did Jesus say not to, right? He says don't take an oath at all. Like your word should be true and your character should be such that when you say something, you don't even need to take an oath. But you guys are doing this. Like you're swearing oaths to heaven, but Jesus says that's where God is. God's in heaven. Okay, well, I'm going to take an oath by earth. Nope, that's his footstool. He's there too. By Jerusalem, city of the great king. No, an oath by your own head. You can't even change the color of your hair. With maybe a little just for men in your beard, I don't know, but you can't like actually make your hair turn a different color. You have no power over that. What's Jesus saying? Jesus is saying here, he's saying, listen, you make an oath, heaven, earth, Jerusalem, guess what? God is there and he knows all and he sees all. You swear an oath by your own head, you have no power over, Jesus is over you. And so what he's saying is your oaths are meaningless. So stop this culture of I promise I'm going to do it. I ain't going to do it. Yep, I'll be there. I'm not going to be there. I swear that I'll do it. I swear that I'll be there. I swear that I'll, right? And then you don't. Jesus is saying the new covenant community should be characterized by people who speak the truth and have integrity to the point where they don't need to be like, oh, I promise this time. And people that are like that, like I said, you kind of roll your eyes like, yeah, okay, he's not going to do it. No, I swear it, I'm going to do it. No, he's not going to do it. Jesus is saying that your integrity should be such that when you say something, they say, yep, no, he comes through. She means it. There's commitment there. Not what? How many of you struggle with this? In the moment, especially because we want to take the path of least resistance and because we kind of want to avoid conflict, what do? We get tempted to just tell people what they want to hear. Right? And what happens when you just tell people what they want to hear is, in the short term, people like you. Oh yeah, I talked to him and yeah, he agrees with me. But then in time, it's like, well, I talked to him too, and he agrees with me, and we don't agree with each other, and he agrees with both of us. So in the short term, people like you. But if you tell people what they want to hear long enough, eventually everyone realizes what? You don't have any integrity. Why? Because you're just telling people what they want to hear so that they'll like you, so that there won't be conflict, so that you won't have to deal with pushback on anything. And we've all sat underneath, leaders and bosses and stuff who led like this. And eventually what happens? You lose respect because there's no integrity. And so when Jesus says, be a person of integrity with the words that you say, are you that type of a person who is characterized by what? Not just telling people what they want to say, but by telling people the truth, regardless of what the outcome may be. Secondly, this happens a lot, and some of you are really, really good at this, right? You don't necessarily say something that's not true, but what do? You take something that actually happened, and you kind of twist it ever so much in your favor so that what? It serves your agenda. Well, I didn't lie. That actually happened. Yeah, but you left out a significant point. Or you painted this person in a light that you wanted them to be painted. And yes, did that happen? Technically, yes, but you twisted the truth to serve your agenda. This happens all the time. And so Jesus is simply here saying, listen, you and your oath-taking and breaking of oaths, it's sin. That's what he's saying. He says, let your yes be yes. If you say yes, mean it. If you say no, mean it. He says anything beyond that comes from evil. So a lack of integrity in the words that we say and the commitments that we make. Like if you can't do, like listen, some of you have a hard time saying no just because you have a hard time saying no. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll be there. And then you don't. Like if you have to say no, Jesus says, then say no. Yeah, but they'll be mad at me. They'll be disappointed. They'll feel like I'm letting them down. I get all that. What is more important is your integrity. Yes, if you say no, they may be disappointed. They may be frustrated. That may create some tension. But if you say yes and don't fulfill your commitment, then you damage the relationship. People lose respect. Oh, and if you bear the name of Christ, how do lost people look at the community of Christians then who don't have integrity? Well, they're no different than us. So Jesus is saying those in our new covenant community do not operate the way that the first century Jewish culture was operating. If you need to say yes, say yes. If you need to say no, then say no and be okay to say no. Like sometimes no is a perfectly fine answer. Amen. He goes on. His next issue. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Okay. Right? That's woven into the law of God, right? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also, right? Turn the other cheek text, right? This one gets hard. If anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. All right, so we have quite a few things here. And you'll probably have more time in your small groups to talk about the ramifications of this part here. But secondly, what we're going to see is the gospel produces a life characterized by grace and servanthood, by grace toward others and serving others. When Jesus says here, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye, all right? But I say unto you, do not resist the one who is evil. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other. If someone takes you to court, takes your tunic, right? Give to him your cloak also. The tunic was the undergarment, the cloak was the outer garment. Like give him more, right? So what he's saying, first of all, is this. Do not repay violence with violence. That's the first thing he's saying, okay? The Old Testament law did provide for direction to guide courts in their judgment. That's why the Old Testament law says, yes, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. What is that teaching? Well, the first century Jewish people meant, hey, if someone takes out your eye, you need to take out their eye. If someone hurts you, you need to hurt them back. That's how they were interpreting this text. Jesus is saying, no. He said, first of all, the eye for an eye, that was given so that there would be equal justice within the court system of the Jewish community. All right, this was part of their civil law that helped them govern themselves in the land. So that then when there was something done, a crime, something stolen, an attack, someone was hurt, then the crime would match also the punishment. That's what it was given. So this eye for an eye, or what's in Latin called the lex talionis, or the law of retaliation, they began to view that in a personal sense. Like, oh, I now have the right to retaliate. Jesus said, no, you don't. This principle was not intended to guide individuals in order so that they could exact their own revenge, but that's what they were doing. So do you see how they were using the Old Testament law to justify lying? They were using the Old Testament law to justify revenge and vengeance toward other people. This is what was happening. And so Jesus says, when insulted, don't retaliate in the same way or in kind. In other words, turn the other cheek. Now, this is not in the sense of like when someone slaps you on the cheek. This is more of an insult. You know, think of like the old British guy taking the glove and slapping you, like, right? And just insult. This isn't like this isn't like trying to hurt you. Like there's so here's the tension. Well, do we have the right to self-defense? Yes, you do. You have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to defend your family. You have the right to defend those who are weak around you. All right? And I hope that we would do that. But this idea of slapping on the cheek isn't that. This is just the idea of being insulted, being demeaned. And so when insulted, right, when someone honks their horn at you and gives you the one-finger salute on the road, what do you do? Right? Step on the gas, run up next to him, right? Respond with your own whatever. When someone hurts you, is unkind to you, right? How do you respond? Do we respond with violence? Do we respond with vengeance? Do we respond with like Doug, this is hard. Right? I get this. Like some of us are more wired to retaliate with anger and with violence than others. Right? Like if you do something to me, like I realize, like I listen, I realize I'm not what you would call a large man, but I am crazy. All right? I will cut you. All right? So don't, right? Like that's kind of how it's hard, like when we get angry, when someone hurts us, when someone demeans us, when someone insults us, when someone does something to us, right? Like when someone calls us a name, even if we didn't do anything, right? Or if we did something, right, and we get someone at work lashes out on us, or someone on the road, or a family member, whatever it is, we want to step in. And so what the first century Jewish community was doing is they were saying, hey, an eye for an eye, I can get back at you. Jesus is saying, no. Actually, he says, don't resist the evil person. Don't resist them in the same way, right? If anyone insults you, turn the other cheek. Like this is crazy stuff because it goes so counterculture to human nature and to the culture at large. Jesus is saying this is the way the covenant community should live. So some of you need to talk within your small groups about what this looks like for you. Because we like to get even, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We like that revenge. When someone hurts us, we want them to hurt as well. Even in court, the judge says, yeah, you've lost the case. Give him the tunic. All right, I'll give him this, but I'll go above and beyond. And so what Jesus is ultimately pointing us to is this attitude within the Christian community. This attitude of revenge is actually foreign to the Christian ethic, completely foreign. What does Paul say in Romans? Repay no one evil for evil. Like that's hard. I'm not going to stand here and say, like that's hard for me. But give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all is the sight of all, if possible. Right? Okay, so there's some caveats. If possible, as far as it depends on you, right? Sometimes you can't control other people's actions, I get it. But as much as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will be heaping burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome, here it is, by evil, but do what? How do we overcome evil? By doing good. This is a kingdom ethic that has proven to be true over and over again if you study church history. And so where the demands abound, let grace abound more. Do what the law requires, go further. A radically unselfish attitude will actually amaze the world around you and please God. Like if we lived this way, how would it impact the culture around us? If only the people who named the name of Christ actually lived this way, how would that change the culture at large? But we have become so infiltrated with the cultural mindset as they were in the first century that this is actually becoming foreign to the Christian mindset. And he says, serve others sacrificially. If anyone asks you to go 1 mile, let him, or go 2. See, under Roman law, they were required to carry the load of a soldier for 1,000 steps. And this law was no doubt abused by so many Roman soldiers. And this was a reminder to them, every time this happened, that you are our subjects. You are beneath us. We have conquered you. And as such, you must do this. And it was incredibly, imagine you're on your way home from a long day of work. You've worked hard and you're tired and you just want to get home, put your feet up and have dinner and enjoy the evening. And you're almost home and you run into a Roman soldier. He says, hey, Jew, take my load, 1,000 steps, and you could do nothing about it. You would be like, fine, take it, you do your duty, and then you throw it down at his feet, you curse him, and you leave. That's what usually happened. Jesus said, what if you did this? What if you served that man? What if you showed him the sacrificial love of Jesus, and you took it that first mile, that first 1,000 steps, and you said, hey, I'm going to go another. What kind of an impact would that have on that person? What kind of an impact would that have on the culture at large? So in love, serve others as you have been served by Christ. Amen. And he says this. I'm going to have the worship team come as we prepare to close out this service. But Jesus says this. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. This one probably has to be talked about in more detail than we have time this morning in light of culture. They didn't have social welfare and social safety net programs in first century, right? Jewish culture and Roman culture. They basically had beggars all over. Jesus says, feed them, serve them, love them. Right? Help those in need. The New Covenant community should be known as a people for helping people with legitimate needs. Now, I understand how this plays itself out in our culture. We have to sit and talk about, right? Because what about the immigrants? What about the undocumented? What about the people that have come from other countries that are poor? And so this creates actually a lot of tension even within the debate about deportations and the church's role in that, and should the church be in favor of that? And I know there's different viewpoints on both sides of this. And again, these are conversations I want you guys to have within your small groups, because how this plays out practically in our lives matters. Like, we should not be a church that just finds ourselves kind of hunkered down with our own wealth and we to the neglect of the needs and the awareness of the fact that people have needs all around us, especially up here in the Philadelphia suburbs. The needs abound all around us. So the question is, are we as a church helping to meet those needs or not? Are you as an individual helping to meet those legitimate needs that people have or not? And how are you doing that, right? And one of the ways that we've done that here is we had Julianne Heilman here last week. We talked about the needs of the orphan and the widow in Uganda. Some of you have gone with us over to that country. Some of you have sponsored kids. That's one way of doing that. That's one way of doing that. What about in our own community? How are we helping to serve the poor and the fatherless, the widows in our own communities? What does that look like? Jesus says the new covenant community should be marked by that. In fact, we're going to get to the end of Matthew. Jesus is going to say, when you see me coming on the day of judgment, one of the things I'm going to ask you is, did you give them a cup of cold water in my name? Did you serve those who were naked and give them clothing? Did you serve those who were hungry and you gave them food? Did you serve those in prison and visit them? Because inasmuch as you have done it to them, you have done it to who? Unto him. So serving the poor should be an extension of who we are. Why? Because of this truth, we all were beggars who have been richly blessed with the riches of Christ. And out of the abundance of what he has given us, both spiritually and physically, we now give and we serve others. So 2 issues of life that we need to focus on and think about: our integrity and our service. God calls us to shine as lights in the darkness.